Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint's Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. You've heard their point, now listen to the counterpoint.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. We're coming at you on November 23rd, 2021, and it's Thanksgiving week, so maybe we've got a few things to be thankful for, but before we get into any of that, let's introduce our panel to you. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. Upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So let's just get into it. We're going to have another show coming up soon where we get a little more into Thanksgiving. But one thing I have a little bit to give thanks about is just how the Rittenhouse verdict came in last week, and I think it was the right verdict, and I think I think we would have been it wouldn't have been a good thing for self-defense or maybe the Second Amendment too if that had gone the other way. I'm not quite sure what there would have been left for anybody, but do you guys want to jump in on that real quick? Just some initial takes on the verdict before we get into some of the other aspects of all this.
After looking at the evidence, what happened to that little kid? He was just 17 years old at the time. If that was not self-defense, then nothing is. If that was not self-defense, then we are lost as a country, because we cannot defend ourselves ever again. If that was not self-defense, he was chased. He was hit with a skateboard. Somebody pointed a gun at him, and he responded to all of those things. And if that was not self-defense, then God help us.
Yeah, I agree. So I've passed the Rittenhouse trial verdict IQ test. In fact, all three of us have, and with flying colors. Because anybody that doesn't believe the verdict was just and correct is a lower IQ than the rest of us. That's for sure, at least. I hate to put it that way. No, I love to put it that way. I frequently put it that way. I frequently bemoan and besmirch the low IQs of people that watch the mainstream media, for example. I mean, seriously, if you didn't have a low IQ before you watched, things like the Rittenhouse trial or coverage thereof on the mainstream media, you'll have a low IQ after you watch it. Okay, so just do yourself a favor and just don't watch it. Seriously, I mean, you're out of your mind. I mean, they totally leave massive segments of the thing out. You're not getting any expert opinion. You're getting the opinion of a bunch of morons that work for the mainstream media. I mean, people that had journalism degrees and didn't do very good at that to boot. And now they're supposedly, telling the truth about what goes on in the world. And you believe that? Really? I mean, seriously, you need to stop right now and just stop watching the mainstream media. It's just a farce, it's a complete farce. And and this Rittenhouse case brings it right out. It's just, and plus, the country's polarized. Yeah, I know it's polarized. It's just one group sees the same information and comes up with a totally different. Assuming they do see the same information, which is not exactly a valid assumption, but they could see the same thing and come up with completely different perspectives on the, for example, the verdict. But again, I maintain that a trusted, that I've listened to for at least 5 or 6 years, expert on the law of self-defense, Andrew Branca, saw absolutely nothing in those videos that would indicate anything less than self-defense from Kyle Rittenhouse. And the other people were not victims, they were the aggressors. And so I go by what somebody who's written books on the law of self-defense and not somebody that watches a YouTube video and thinks that they're an expert on everything, including vaccines and, Pfizer and the Rittenhouse verdict, and they're experts on self-defense law because they saw a YouTube video or two. No, I'm not going with that, and I'm not an expert. I'm not saying I am because I saw Andrew Branca's YouTube videos. No, not at all. I'm just parroting what he said, and that's it.
Well, that's actually kind of a good segue of where I wanted to go with this, because I think that the real, verdict, for this trial, at least for the country, that the real thing we learn is that the mainstream media, legacy media, is just awful. I mean, if nothing else, they're just peddling poison to people to divide us and to peddle hate. I mean, the crazy stuff that was coming out of not just the usual suspects like MSNBC and CNN, but a lot of other big papers, like the Washington Post and New York Times. They kept a lot of pertinent facts from their readers and viewers, so that they couldn't even come to the right conclusion. Just the narrative that they were looking to peddle. So I think that's pretty bad. I have a little clip here, and maybe we can show this. This is a clip I saw. It was from the Washington Post, and I wanted to play just a little snippet of it, and we'll talk over it a little bit because we don't want to get any dings on the algorithms out there. But what I wanted to show is that almost everybody has seen this stuff from the trial, but this is the stuff that the Washington Post was putting out before the trial, and so it's and they cut it in such a way that they left out a lot of interesting facts. And so I'm gonna start it, and let's see if we can hear it. Okay. So can you guys hear it fine?
You're not hearing it.
Okay. Can you guys hear anything now?
No.
So, okay. Can you hear that now?
No.
So this is where he is running. Okay. Well, if you guys aren't hearing anything still, or
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay. Well, let me just describe then what was happening there. So essentially, that was the scene where Rosenbaum had just been shot by Kyle Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse.
Yes, and so what they show there is they show Kyle Rittenhouse standing near the body, and there's a narrating voice coming over it. And what the narrating voice says is that Kyle Rittenhouse takes off and runs away, and then they cut it right as you're showing him run off. Well, as every longer clip shows, that you hear people say, "Hey, that guy shot that guy. Let's cranium that kid," and you see people going after him. But they literally cut it right there so that you don't see that that's the crowd that's forming, so that there's a reason why he's taking off and running at that point. Yeah. And let me play just a little bit more. Now they get to the part where he's headed toward the police line, and they immediately cut it so that he is already just about falling on the ground. They're not showing exactly what's led up to the fact where he's being asked by people, "Oh, where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to the police." He literally says that to one of the witnesses in the trial, and he says it on a phone. It's recorded, and so it looks like he's just running away. Then he was literally hit in the head before he fell here, and they cut that scene out as well. And then as we play it just a little bit longer, they talk about him. He had just been hit by the skateboard guy right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right after he hit him, there was this Grosskreutz guy who was also a witness in the trial as well. And, they mentioned that he just turned around and shot him as well. They don't mention that Gage Grosskreutz pulled a gun on him, that he literally was pointing a gun.
One pointed at him, yes.
Exactly. And they're showing it from far away in this scene. And so it's in all of these other, media outlets like Fox and some of the other ones, they were showing this stuff, and showing it up close. Whereas here we had, certain media outlets were trying to spin a narrative. And so it was no wonder that, so many people, I guess, found, that Kyle was, not acting in self-defense. They thought it was just some kid who came across a state line and with a gun and decided he was going to shoot people. And a lot of people were even misinformed to the point where they thought that he was shooting black people when all of these victims were white and they were criminals too. So you guys have any thoughts on all this?
If I could just...
I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If I could just jump in. Thankfully, we have a jury, and the jury gets to see the close-ups, and they get to really analyze it because. And I saw an erroneous statement somewhere where it says the burden is on the prosecution in a self-defense trial. No, the burden is on the defendant. The defendant admits he killed people or shot them, whatever. He's admitting that. There's no requirement for a jury to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed a homicide. Then he's admitting to the homicide. Then the defendant has to prove that he met the requirements of self-defense. And there's 5 basic requirements. And he has to prove that he met all 5 of them. So the burden of proof is on the defendant. So in this case, when he was, the verdict was not guilty under all counts, he did a fantastic job, and his attorneys, of convincing the jury that the homicides that he committed and he admitted to were justifiable. So it goes from a homicide to a justifiable homicide, and it's stuff like this. I mean, thankfully there was more video and better quality, people were able to bring the images up, and you could see what was really going on here because the jury could see it. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what CNN or MSNBC BS's everybody about. It doesn't matter what they think, okay? Their thoughts are immaterial in a trial. It's only what the jury thinks, thankfully. Leon, go ahead.
Well, going back to Jason's point about misinformation, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tim. But going back to Jason's point about misinformation, prior to the trial, the amount of misinformation that was coming out about this kid and all of the things that he did that night, it was nothing short of staggering. Number one, they spoke about the fact that he crossed state lines with a gun. And after yesterday, they were saying that he crossed state line with a gun ready for battle. This was said yesterday on the news, I believe on CBS, or day before yesterday on CBS. Kyle Rittenhouse did not cross state lines with a gun. The gun was already in Kenosha at his friend's house. And when he got to his friend's house, that's when he picked up the gun. So he never crossed state lines with a gun. And I don't even know why that makes a difference, quite frankly. We have the borders open and people crossing our international borders without any sort of problems. But if somebody crossed state lines, it's an issue. I can't understand that one in the first case.
Yeah, and the same people that bellyache about Kyle's gun don't give a damn about other people coming up from Mexico with whatever.
Exactly.
Well, but to the point too, as well, when they say state line, they're trying to prejudice you to think that he's coming from a long distance, when in fact he was literally driving 20 minutes, which is a distance to most suburbs, right? I mean, it's certainly from where I live to downtown in Sacramento, it's about 20 minutes, right? So
that's my drive to work. Actually, 25 minutes. It's my drive to work.
Sure.
Yeah. And the fact that
it was just a normal, like a little commute for all of us. Well, when I was working, I don't work anymore. When I was working, there's a little commute, 20 minutes, 20 miles or so. That's a commute. And they're making this big deal about him crossing state lines as if, like you said, Jason, come from so far away just to get to Kenosha, just to kill people. And that's the next thing. It was actually reported in some outlet, Kyle Rittenhouse killed when none of the victims were. Not a single one of them were black. And as a matter of fact, there was a woman, I believe, a well-known liberal, I think, she said she did not discover that Kyle Rittenhouse victims, if you could call them victims, were white, she did not discover that until the trial began. And she's somebody who's supposed to be well-read and keeping up with the news and all kind of stuff. It all goes back to the misinformation. Another one that was a big one was how Carl Rittenhouse chased Rosenbaum and shot him when the opposite was true. It is true that Rittenhouse did end up shooting him in the back, but that was when he was falling. Rittenhouse fired, and the shot caught him somewhere in the back of his neck and came out on his butt. But he did not chase down him and shoot him in the back.
Yeah, it was as he was diving towards him. Yeah.
But they had all of these things all later, all this misinformation, all meant to support one narrative, that this guy was this white supremacist who was out to kill black people, and that is why he was there, and that is why we have to make sure he's found guilty whenever he comes to trial. God help us if this thing had survived as the truth. God help us.
Well, and you know that this is what it comes down to too, is that you know that the media seems to be trying to spin a narrative, you know, or at least some media, you know, agents of the media seem to be doing that, and it's just you know, the idea that this has to be about race. I mean, you know, you brought that up, you know, the idea that this was a BLM peaceful protest, which was, you know, really a riot, you know, that was going on, and that's why he was there, and the police were standing down, which is also why he was there. So, you know, they were just letting things burn essentially, and it's just you know, they left this opinion, and for a lot of people, they did not tell him, or they did not tell their viewers that Kyle came there to a BLM riot, and the color of the people he shot. Normally that'd be a good thing, but the way the media tries to spin race when they talk about it, they mention it when it's advantageous to them and when it's not. So like, for instance, in this, they say he went to a BLM riot and shot 3 people. Well, the assumption is he probably shot some black people at that BLM riot. And so then the narrative is white supremacist goes to BLM riot and shoots 3 people, right? But in reality, it was 3 white people who were criminals, right? Yeah.
I think what the left is thinking, I may be wrong. I mean, I'm going to throw it out there, but because the protest was over a black man killed by the police, and as Leon
knows, he was shot, not killed.
Oh, he was shot. Okay. He wasn't even. Gee whiz. Yeah. So he was shot by police for trying to reach for a knife, and they'd given him all kinds of chances to be peacefully apprehended, but no, he was having none of that. They had to finally shoot him. Okay, so this pillar of society is now there's going to be protests and burning and looting and rioting. Okay, so the burners, looters, rioters, and protesters are being defended against by a Kyle Rittenhouse. That's why he's racist, not because he shot 3 white guys, because he was there trying to keep businesses from being burned to the ground,
right? And
that's what makes him a racist, you see.
Yeah. You see, but you see, it just gets back to the point. You know, law and order have been so diminished throughout the United States in many of our big cities. We are creating our elected leaders in these cities at the local level, the mayors and the city councils and stuff. They are creating this vacuum. We're having this damn nonsense. Oh, defund the police. This damn nonsense of telling police to stand down when there's an obvious riot going on. I mean, Kenosha was rioting. That's what was going on there. They created this vacuum. So if you create the vacuum, what's going to happen? People like Kyle Rittenhouse are going to step in. I think he had good intentions. He stepped in there, but he had a gun. And he used the gun appropriately to defend himself. And that should have been the case. And I think the jury validated that use of his gun. But the point is, though, too many places in the United States, we have these vacuums are being created because the police are either being defunded or being told to stand down, so that these so-called social justice warriors can create their mayhem as they please. And then we have incidents like this, and then everybody starts yell and scream about white supremacy.
Well, Leon, and I wanted to segue, because this is a perfect segue into our last topic before we get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. But this really brings up a key issue that we've been hearing ad nauseum since the verdict, and even going up to the verdict when a lot of people realized Kyle was innocent. But they wanted to find something to condemn him on. And this is something I think it'd be good to talk about. And that's that, a lot of people are saying essentially this narrative now that, well, yes, Kyle was defending himself, but he shouldn't have been there. That's the narrative, is that he was defending himself, but he should not have been there. And I actually, don't find that very compelling, because the reason is that, maybe you can say his own personal interest, he shouldn't have been there. But here's the problem. As Leon just said, police were being told to stand down by our leaders in a lot of places throughout the country. And what is the solution? We hear people, Bill Maher was on the other night, and he was saying, well, this can't be the solution, that people go out and take justice into their own hands. What is the solution? Literally, if the government tells people the police to stand down, and you see your friends and neighbors being victimized, and you're being told, don't take the law into your own hands. That's kind of this. The lefties, a lot of times, they love to go to the social contract and say, oh, we have this social contract to justify all the stuff they want to do they say for us, but it's to us. but the key issue here is that if there truly is a social contract on their side of things, then they have to acknowledge that means they have to follow the laws. That's got to be part of the social contract. And they literally have leaders telling them to police stand down and let people victimize you. And that is horrific. And I think, Kyle should be, I think, given a thank you for what he did that day, and not being condemned and told he made a mistake going there. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on it.
Well,
No, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I beat you again. If the Koreans were up on the rooftops of their businesses with rifles and shotguns in the Watts riots of the 1960s, then nothing's changed, and nothing has. I mean, police are not required to protect you, and certainly not your property. Okay, they're not. Okay, now maybe you can say they should, but they're not required by any, as far as the number of Supreme Court cases that have ruled the same way. They're not required to save you and your life. They're not required to be your personal bodyguard. That's your job. And likewise, it's your job to protect your kitty cat and your property. And so it just comes. That's why we're in this thing. And it's going to continue. It's never going to change. The cops will protect the cops. That's all they do. They'll protect the police precinct and the Justice Department building. That's it. Okay, they're not going to come down to your Target or your mom and pop shoe store and protect it from being burned to the ground. You're going to have to do that, Bucky.
Yeah, but Tim, if that is true, what you're saying,
and it is
the role of the police in our society, then we in some really dangerous times, because now, even when people do protect their property, as the McCloskeys did in St. Louis, what did they end up doing? They prosecuted them. They had to plead guilty. They did lesser charges, but they didn't plead guilty to something. They prosecuted them. So not only that, you're saying the police is creating the vacuum, maybe because of our elected leaders, but the prosecutors are coming in and prosecuting people who filled the vacuum. Kyle Rittenhouse and the McCloskeys were both prosecuted. So we're in dangerous times.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I just wanted to add on something to cement what you said earlier, Tim, and that's that, Kyle Rittenhouse recently did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and in that interview, he said that night before he went home, he tried to turn himself into the Kenosha Police Department, but they were very well defended, and they weren't letting anybody in. So it's interesting, like you said, Tim, all the buildings allowed to be burned except the Kenosha Police Department, which was so well defended that if you were guilty, you couldn't turn yourself in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Too long. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know what planet of highly effective police that Leon comes from, but it ain't planet Earth.
Like I said, they created the vacuum. Okay, how that vacuum comes about, we might disagree on, but a vacuum definitely is being created.
Well, let's jump to the Knucklehead Noise Patrol real quick. We're getting close to the end of the show. And on this particular item, we have a visual here. Unfortunately, I would play the audio, but it wasn't coming across well, so I'll just let you know the crazy stuff she said. But essentially, I mean, we talk about this racist narrative. I mean, these people are so race obsessed in the media. It's just beyond belief. And here, Joy Reid of MSNBC did some kind of a TikTok video where she literally tied Kyle Rittenhouse and Brett Kavanaugh together and started talking about how their white tears were, essentially being used to corrupt the system. And let me just give you a quick quote of what she said here in her rant. I mean, it was just bizarre, and there's weird music playing behind and everything. You really got to go check it out, and we have a link here, so feel free to do that. But she said, but in America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears, really white tears in general, because that's what Karens are, right? They can Karen out, and then as soon as they get caught, bring waterworks. It's just beyond belief. I mean, this woman is beyond the pale, I mean, now they're looking at the color of our tears. You guys got any thoughts on this?
To these people, unless you drink from that same fountain of poison of race that they are spilling out into our society, spreading this poison worse than the COVID is doing to America or have done to America. To these people, unless you're willing to drink that, you are no good. You're either a racist or a sellout. One way or the other, you're no good to them. And Joy Reid is nothing but a modern-day member of the Ku Klux Klan. She's black, I know, and the Ku Klux Klan only used to take white members. But she could easily join the Ku Klux Klan and be very, very comfortable with her racist that she spill on MSNBC almost every night.
Yeah. I have nothing to add.
Well, I will fill in, I guess, a little bit since we have about a minute before the end of the show. But, this is just terrible. I mean, this is part of what the media seems intent upon doing in the last, decade or so, is that they just want to highlight race anywhere and everywhere so that they can divide us. And it's just, it's sickening and it's sad because it's really causing us to be a divided nation at this point.
Well, it's to tell you how sick these people are. One white guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, killed two white guys and wounded another white guy. But yet, there's an issue of race in this. How does this work? No matter how you twist and you turn, no matter what you do, you say the wrong word or you take the wrong action, it might be unintended. It becomes an issue of race. That is the poison of these people. They have to put race in your face every single time, no matter what it is you do.
It's terrible, but we're at the end of our show, and so we've got to go. But, since it is Thanksgiving, I wanted to say one other thing. Thank you, Kyle Rittenhouse. You set out to defend the community, and you wound up defending all of us,
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Life,
until then, see you next
liberty,
week.
and the pursuit of happiness